Today we're going to talk about equivalence relations. Equivalence relations. An equivalence relation is a particularly good, neat and tidy form of relationship between things. So you start with a set of things and then you have a look at relationships between the things, and if the kind of relationship is very neat and tidy in a particular way I'll talk about in a minute, you call it an equivalence relation. So let's think about a few examples. So if you think about people, you can think about relations between people. Now have you ever thought about friends and about whether if you're friends with someone else and they're friends with someone else, does that mean that you're friends with them? So for example, if Amy is friends with Bob and Bob is friends with Charlie, is Amy friends with Charlie? Well, it's not very clear, is it? I mean, sometimes maybe Amy's friends with Bob and Bob is friends with Charlie, but Amy really hates Charlie. I mean, that's possible, isn't it? This is the kind of thing that Facebook wants everyone to think. Facebook wants everyone to think that the friends of their friends really are their friends. And maybe for some people that's true, but it's not completely obvious. What about if Amy is friends with Bob? Does that necessarily mean that Bob is friends with Amy? Well, that's unfortunately not very clear either. And finally, is Amy even friends with herself? Is Amy friends with herself? Well, unfortunately, that's not very clear either. Some people don't like themselves at all, which is very sad. But these are the three things that we think about when we're talking about whether relations are nice, tidy, easy to understand, and that's what equivalence relations are. So these three conditions, this condition is called transitivity. This condition is called symmetry. And this condition is called reflexivity. So transitivity kind of means, does it transfer along chains of relations? Symmetry means, if the relation goes that way, does it necessarily go back again? And reflexivity means, does the relation hold on itself? Does everyone relate to themselves in that way? So let's think about another example. This was the friends example. Let's think about siblings. Okay, so if Amy is a sibling of, maybe I'll put that in a different colour. If Amy is a sibling of Bob, and Bob is a sibling of Charlie, is Amy a sibling of Charlie? Well, yeah, that really is true, isn't it? Because if Amy and Bob are siblings, and Bob and Charlie are siblings, Amy hasn't got no choice, she really is a sibling of Charlie. So what about if Amy is a sibling of Bob, is Bob a sibling of Amy? Yup, that's true. And what about, is Amy a sibling of herself? Well, I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think you are a sibling of yourself. So in this case, being a sibling of someone does satisfy transitivity, so it's transitive. It is also symmetric, but it's not reflexive. So it's not an equivalence relation. So let's try another one. Let's try being older than someone. So we can rub out all these blue bits again, and instead of having is a sibling of, it's quite difficult to rub out these blue bits actually, we can put in older than. So if Amy is older than Bob, and Bob is older than Charlie, is Amy older than Charlie? Well, yes, that is true, isn't it? What about if Amy is older than Bob? Is Bob older than Amy? Well, that's clearly rubbish, so this isn't symmetric. And finally, is Amy older than herself? Well, that's clearly rubbish as well. So this one is only transitive, and it's not symmetric, and it's not reflexive either. So let's try instead being at the same school as someone. So if Amy is at school with Bob, and Bob is at school with Charlie, does that mean Amy is at school with Charlie? And the answer is yes. If Amy is at school with Bob, does that mean that Bob is at school with Amy? And the answer is also yes. And finally, is Amy at school with herself? I think the answer to that is yes as well. So being at school with someone is an equivalence relation. So this one is an equivalence relation because it satisfies these three properties. So we'll make that more formal later, and we'll then also see why satisfying these properties is what we want for a relation to be neat and tidy.